Good evening, people. I'm Pastor Leia, and Gingersnap is probably about to jump up on the screen. Nice timing! This is Gingersnap, my co-host. So welcome back to our living room for our Tuesday night Bible study series as we go through the scripture of Lent and some of the art that goes along with it for our worship series for the season, Seeking from A Sanctified Art. So tonight we have another story from the Gospel of John. So from John chapter 11, verses 1 through 45. Hear now the word of the Lord. Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. Mary was the one who anointed the Lord with perfume and wiped his feet with her hair. Her brother Lazarus was ill. So the sisters sent a message to Jesus, "Lord, he whom you love is ill." But when Jesus heard it, he said, "This illness does not lead to death. Rather, it is for God's glory, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it." Accordingly, though Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus, after having heard that Lazarus was ill, he stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. Then after this, he said to the disciples, "Let us go to Judea again." The disciples said to him, "Rabbi, the Jews were just now trying to stone you, and are you going there again?" Jesus answered, "Are there not 12 hours of daylight? Those who walk during the day do not stumble, because they see the light of the world. But those who walk at night stumble, because the light is not in them." After saying this, he told them, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going there to awaken him." The disciples said to him, "Lord, if he's fallen asleep, he'll be all right." Jesus, however, had been speaking about his death, but they thought that he was referring merely to sleep. Then Jesus told them plainly, "Lazarus is dead. For your sake I am glad I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him." Thomas, who was called the Twin, said to his fellow disciples, "Let us also go, that we may die with him." When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. Now, Bethany was near Jerusalem, some 2 miles away, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them about their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him, while Mary stayed at home. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that God will give you whatever you ask of him." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha said to him, "I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live, and everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" She said to him, "Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one coming into the world." When she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary and told her privately, "The teacher is here and is calling for you." And when she heard it, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet come to the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. The Jews who were with her in the house consoling her saw Mary get up quickly and go out. They followed her because they thought that she was going to the tomb to weep there. When Mary came where Jesus was and saw him, she knelt at his feet and said to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was greatly disturbed in spirit and deeply moved. He said, "Where have you laid him?" They said to him, "Lord, come and see." Jesus began to weep. So the Jews said, "See how he loved him." But some of them said, Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying?" Then Jesus, again greatly disturbed, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, "Do not bite the Bible, excuse you." Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, "Lord, already there is a stench, because he has been dead 4 days." Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. And Jesus looked upward and said, "Father, I thank you for having heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I have said this for the sake of the crowd standing here, so that they may believe that you sent me." When he had said this, he cried with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, his hands and feet bound with strips of cloth, and his face wrapped in a cloth. Jesus said to them, "Unbind him and let him go." This is the word of the Lord. So this story comes up several times in the lectionary. Of course, in year A for Lent, and it also comes up at least once in the cycles for All Saints' Day. Forget if it's in multiple years of Lent. The lectionary is a 3-year cycle, which theoretically goes through most of the gospel readings. Anyway, neither here nor there. Anyway, it's a beautiful story, and it's really the way that the sisters are both so, they say the same thing. They're so convinced that if Jesus had been there, their brother wouldn't have died. And it's this statement of Jesus is powerful, could have stopped this from happening, but wasn't. And why wasn't he? Why did he choose that? So now we come to our time of Visio Divina, which is the moment that the cat jumps off my lap, which is the practice of using a piece of art as a focal point as we read and reflect on scripture. Please do not bite the charger cord for the computer, Gingersnap. I will spray you in the face. Those are expensive and not chew toys. So where do you hear God's voice in this story? What questions are being asked in this story? What questions would you ask? Take a deep breath in and out. Continue breathing deeply as you read the image. What do you see? What stands out to you? How is the imagery cohesive with the scripture? Now take a deeper look. What parts of the image are your eyes most drawn to? What parts of the image did you quickly brush by or overlook? How does the image make you feel? So now I will read the statement that the artist, Hannah Garrity, wrote about creating this piece. She writes, "As I met with this text, I was drawn to Jesus' call for Lazarus to be unbound. To represent the fabrics used in preparation for burial, I wrapped a canvas in linen. You're not really supposed to do that. The canvas was already stretched and gessoed. It was ready to resist the oil paint medium I was applying. However, the texture of the binding cloth matters for this tactile text. I began to scrape the paint onto the woven strands. The linen fabric absorbed the paint as I scraped it on with a palette knife. In the final image, the linen shows through the paint and the paper lace design, representing the bindings." Jesus' call for unbinding also includes the community. The foreshortened hands of the community tasked with unbinding his body reach in towards Lazarus. They reach through the concentric binding lines so that he can go free. Can these bones live? In the strength of community, they can. The community made up of Jews, Gentiles, Samaritans, and others all joined one another at the tomb to grieve for Lazarus that day. They came to support Mary and Martha. Jesus arrives as the community mourns together. Jesus cries in his grief. Their collective tears create the backdrop for this paper lace design. This diverse and neighborly community is who Jesus calls on to do the unbinding. Jesus makes sure that the community knows about this miracle so that they can share the news. Can these bones live? Lazarus lives, and Jesus' miracle lives on in the telling. So that is what the artist wrote. Do you identify with the artist's reflections? How does hearing Hannah's statement change how you see the arts? Cat furs landing in my lip gloss. So friends, thank you for joining us tonight. You might come back tomorrow on YouTube or Facebook at 8 for our Wednesday evening prayer. And on Thursdays, we are gathering at 9 a.m. in the lounge at the church for an in-person Bible study, going through some themes of Lent with discussion questions by Kate Bowler. So friends, good night.